one's going to drive.
Hopefully next Friday.
Wow. Have you been practicing with him? Good.
He's good.
Good. I'm sure he's good. Okay. I don't have that. I'll be back. I'm going to get the list. Or can I make a copy of yours? It'll be faster. What's up, Louis? How are you? Good to see you. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
You can tell that spring is in the air, and it is good to gather together and to be a part of that renewal of the cycle of the seasons. And so we are going to begin our service on page 10. And on page 10, you'll find the beautiful prayer Shabbat HaMalka, which means Shabbat, our queen. And certainly we think of the royal vision of this day. It's a day of greatness, and that we gather together and feel each other's presence. And that is something that is truly beautiful. And so if you look at the bottom of page 10, you'll find both the Hebrew and the English, both are equally beautiful in the poetry that is in these words.
Chama merosh ha'ilanot nistalka, bo'u v'netze likrat Shabbat hamalka, hine hi yoredet hakdosha berucha, ve'ima malachim tzva shalom u'menucha. Boi, boi, hamalka, boi, boi, hakala, shalom aleichem, malache hashalom. The sun on the treetops no longer is seen. Come gather to welcome the Sabbath, our Queen. Behold her descending, the holy, the blessed, and with her the angels of peace and of rest. Draw near, and here abide. Draw near, O Sabbath bride. Peace also to you angels of peace.
Such a beautiful melody, such beautiful words. Cantor, how old is that melody as far as you know? I'm curious.
I would say it's probably 120 years old.
Yeah, it's one of the, it certainly sounds like it, but it's got this absolute beauty that transcends even the decades, to bring it to today. It's gorgeous. We are going to turn now to lighting our Shabbos candle. It's a joy now to call upon Ethel and Ben Stern to come forward to the bima as they have the honor of kindling our Shabbat lights. The two of you bring a tremendous amount of light into our community, into our congregation. It's only right that you have the honor of kindling those lights. And for the rest of us, as we turn to page 3, you'll find that there's a responsive reading at the top of the page. Let's do this reading together before we kindle the Sabbath lights. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'chadliknu shel Shabbat.
Amen.
Let's all sing together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.
We are now going to turn in our Siddur to page 20, and on page 20 you'll find Lechad Odi. It's a piyut, a poem that was written by the Kabbalists, the mystics of Sfat. And they would begin their Shabbat by ascending on a snake path up to the Ha'ari synagogue, where they would join together in song. It's a custom that on the final verse, when we get to verse 9, when we recite Bawi Kala, which means, O come, O bride, that we stand, that we turn to the door through which we came into our sanctuary and bow in each direction. Let's join together in the singing of Lechad Odi.
Lechad Odi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamo v'zacho b'dibur echad, ishmi'anu el hamiuchad. Adonai echad u'shemo echad, l'shem ultiferet v'litila. Lechad Odi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lechad Odi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechuven elcha, ki mekor habracha. Merosh mikedem nesucha, sof ma'aseh b'machshava tchila. Lechad Odi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lechad Odi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Hit'oreri, ki va'orech kumi ori. Uri, shir daberi, kevod Adonai alayich nigela. Lechad Odi likrat kala, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת קהלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
Please rise.
בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה. תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי לקראת קהלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קהלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
You may be seated. We continue on page 27, reading responsively. Teach me, O God, a blessing, a prayer on the mystery of a withered leaf, on ripened fruit so fair, on the freedom to see, to sense, to breathe, to know, to hope, to despair.
Teach my lips a blessing, a hymn of praise, as each morning and night you renew your days. Lest my day be today as the one before, lest routine set my ways.
We continue with the Chatzi Kaddish on page 26.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעלם לעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה. בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמא ויאמרו Amen.
Entrances to holiness are everywhere. The possibility of ascent is all the time. Even at unlikely times and through unlikely places, there is no place on earth without the presence. We rise now as we turn to the call to worship on page 28.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך, ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
We continue in the Hebrew on page 30. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chochma poteach she'arim, uvitvuna meshane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, sader et hakochavim b'mishmerotehem berakia kirtzono, bore yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or, uma'avir yom umevi layla, Umavdil ben yom uvein laila, Adonai tzevaot shemo. El chai v'kayam tamid imloch alenu leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv v'aravim. We continue now in the English, the bottom of page 32. Everlasting love you offered your people Israel, by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. We join together now in the watchword of our faith, the Shema, on page 34.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed.
You may be seated. We continue with Ve'ahavta, which can be found on page 36.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך. ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם Adonai Elohechem Emet.
We read responsively at the bottom of page 39. When we think about these first words, in a world torn by violence and pain, and certainly this week as we watched and saw these horrible incidents of people being shot simply for coming into the wrong driveway or knocking on the wrong door or having a ball go into the wrong yard. We need to be cognizant not only that we are praying for peace, but that we have to do every possible thing that we make it so. Because if we don't try, then our prayers are known as fruitless prayers. They serve no purpose. We need to be the ones to try to make this world a better place. So whether that means to call upon our elected officials or it means to galvanize your friends and family to try to put an end to the suffering that comes through these needless crimes of aggression that come from gunshots and frankly just not being able to see the humanity in our neighbors. We need to make sure that this doesn't continue. So let's read these words responsively together. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth.
The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love.
From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way.
Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces.
Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed.
Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh, nora tehilot osef ele, nora tehilot osef ele. Malchutecha ra'u vanecha bokei hayam lifnei Moshe uMiriam zeli zeli anu ve'ameru Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed kifad Adonai et Yaakov, ugalo miyad chazak mimenu, baruch ata Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael.
We read together now at the bottom of page 42. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace, and raise us up, our guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. We continue now with the Shamru on page 44.
V'shameru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dorotam berit olam beini uvein bnei Yisrael olti leolam beini uvein bnei Yisrael olti leolam ki sheishet yamim Asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz uvayom hashvi'i shavat vayinafash.
We are a people in whom the past endures, in whom the present is inconceivable without moments gone by. The Exodus lasted a moment enduring forever. What happened once upon a time happens all the time. We continue now at the Tefillah on page 46. Please rise together as one community.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chastei Avot ve'Imahot, Umevi Geula Lihivnei V'neihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh hakol atah Rav lehoshia. Morid hatal, Mechalkel chaim bechesed, Mechayeh hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofei cholim, umatir asurim, umekayim emunato lishenei afar, micha molcha ba'al gevurot, umido melach, melech memit, umechaye, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman ata lehachayot hakol, Baruch ata Adonai, mechaye hakol. Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yehalelucha selah. Baruch ata Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
You may be seated. We continue reading responsively at the top of page 55. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace.
May all who hurt find healing on this day.
May all who despair find purpose.
May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day.
And may this day fulfill its promise.
Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
We continue now on page 56 with Ritzeh.
Ritzeh Adonai Eloheinu, be'amcha Yisrael, amcha Yisrael, u'tefilatam. Be'ahava tekabel, Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu, be'amcha Yisrael, amcha Yisrael, u'tefilatam, be'ahava tekabel. Utehi leratzon tamid, avodat Yisrael amecha. El karov lechol korav, Pnei el avadecha v'choneinu, shefol chruchacha aleinu, v'techezena eineinu, b'shuvcha letzion, Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu, be'amcha Yisrael, amcha Yisrael, u'tefilatam, be'ahava tekabel. Baruch ata Adonai, hamachazir shechinato letzion.
Page 59. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ucha na'eh lehodot. We turn now to the prayer for peace, Shalom Rav, which can be found on page 60.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov be'einecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol eit u'b'chol sha'ah b'shlomecha. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam.
In this pause now between the prayer for peace and the silent prayer, we take a moment and think of those who might be in need of refuat hanefesh or refuat haguf, a healing of spirit or a healing of body. It's appropriate that we pause after this song and this prayer for shalom as we think of those who are in need of shalem, the prayer for peace, and we think of those who are in need of prayer for wholeness. And particularly in our hearts and minds, we're thinking of these dear people. We think of Shendel Batfrida Malka, Julie Borikoff, Margot Roz, Carol Dubin, Sharon Rotman, Steve Toplinsky, Esther Cohen, Lisa Furstadt, Chazan Sarah Chelba Yocheved Alexander, Steve Plotkin, Avram Ben Naftali, Marilyn Harmon, Barry Bursack, Mary Frankowitz, Sophia Rubenstein, Ilana Himmelfarb, Avraham Batfrida, Marla Chikowski, Michael Sychek, David Rotter, Natalie Cohen, Yona Neri Ben Avraham Vasara, Keith Mendel, Jamie Kryman, Isla Bat Natan Vishoshana, Mark Cook, Luke Roberts, Cooper Roberts, Jason Roberts, Keely Roberts, Mark Berlin, Dr. Susie Mendelson, Audrey Rubin, Josh Bowley, Michaela Hellenberg, Julie Austin, Jay Stearns, Chris Gould, Howard Messerman, Michal Stroud, Lisa Fiel, Susan Garrison, Yehuda Ben Avraham Vasara, Shana Leah Bat Yehudit, Warren Beal, Ron Slavin, Peter Rotter, Stuart Peckerman, Wendy Cohen, Suzanne Swain, Fredlin Kruglak-Veal, Scott Keller, Eileen Shippen, Roger Cook, Michael Bernstein-Fine, Lona Ross, Neil Pinsky, Michael Keller, Baruch Laser Ben Esther, Layla Rosen, David Kleinman, Felice Bruskin, Batya Riva Bat Yosef and Miriam. If there are names that should be added to this list or names that should be pronounced differently than I did, I invite you to hold those names in your heart as we turn to these words of tradition. Baruch atah Adonai, Rofei HaCholim. Blessed are you, the source of healing.
Mi sheberach avoteinu mikor habracha le'imoteinu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imoteinu mikor habracha la'avoteinu Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say,
In the echo of this beautiful prayer for healing, we take this time for the prayers of our own heart, the Tefilat Halev.
Iyu leratzon imre fi vehegyon libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri v'goli Adonai tzuri v'goli. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, Adonai, my rock and my Redeemer. Iyu leratzon imre fi v'hegyon libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri v'goli Adonai tzuri v'goli.
Thank you so much to Paul Caston, Cantor Perper, for elevating our prayers so beautifully with music. There's an ick factor to this week's double Torah portion, Tazria Mitzorah. Usually B'nai Mitzvah students sort of live in fear of this Torah portion. Because when we look at the content of the Torah portion, it could make us a bit squeamish. Skin diseases and lesions, forms of leprosy and their treatment in great detail can be off-putting and surprising when we look deeply into the Torah texts. Surprising because we expect to find a spiritual guide and not what feels like a chapter in a book, an anatomy book, like Gray's Anatomy. But when we look closely at these diseases and blemishes that are described as occurring as a result of problematic behavior, it becomes pretty clear that these are not diseases like we see today. Rather, they're physical manifestations of a spiritual problem. And in the Torah, in that time, in the wilderness, for whatever reason, when we looked at someone with a spiritual problem, we could see it right on the surface. Today in our world, spiritual, emotional, and psychological issues are hidden beneath the surface. We don't get to look at a person and know the pain and suffering that they bear. Today, we've been granted the ability to hide our sufferings from others and perhaps deal with the sarat in the recesses of our being without intercession from a priest or prophet. And while that privacy may provide a relief, the hidden nature of our suffering can also prevent its treatment. Now, there's a story that I find particularly moving about King David. It happened that on a day of celebration and festivity, that there was a beautiful parade, and David was riding on a glorious steed, resplendent in robes as his horse trotted down the golden avenues of Jerusalem. And there were shouts of admirers on either side of the road, and trumpet blasts and ticker tape filled the air and reflected the golden sunshine. For all who cast their eyes on King David, you would see only his noble stature, look of calm on his face as he sat upright. And through all the commotion, a young child who was playing with a ball on the side of the road fumbled with her toy, and the ball rolled into the street. And King David leaned down low to fetch the ball for the child, and it was then that people saw that David's robe hanged down at the neck, and they could see that under the beautiful robes, David was wearing the garb of a mourner, like sackcloth and ashes beneath the royal robes. They remembered then that David had lost a son and was in deepest mourning. It was then that the crowd grew still, and out of deepest respect, they touched their hearts as the king rode by. And this story has stuck with me, and I think of it often. Now, it's a privilege of being a rabbi to be let into people's lives. And I have the joy of celebrating with you in moments of triumph and incredible goodness, but I'm also let into the pain, the loss, and the quiet suffering. And because I have that privilege, I also have the knowledge that can't be shared of the great many of us who hold on to that pain and walk the world as though robed in splendor and never reveal the sackcloth and ashes underneath. Especially now, as we live in a world in which we view each other more often than not through the filter of social media. We assume that the robes of splendor tell the whole story. The happy, smiling pictures can hide a great deal, and we can't easily see beyond them. And that fact can make those who are feeling pain and loss and sadness and grief, anxiety and depression, spiritual depletedness and trauma feel terribly alone. And I want you to know that you're not alone. I can think of no life untouched by grief, no smiling face that has not wept. And I want to share with you something of which I'm guilty. I have a tendency, as so many in our culture, to do this, to greet a person with the phrase, "How are you doing?" And so much of the time I say it as I'm on the run, walking quickly down the hall. I'll say to a young kid, "How are you doing?" And I don't hear the answer, because it's meant as a show of affection, a show of care. But I know I'm not alone in using this particular greeting, but how many of us would expect to hear a real and authentic answer? To pause and hear the answer of our fellow, to know all of their joys and all of their woes. Perhaps if we did stop to listen, or if we dropped the robe, let the smile wane for a moment, and honestly shared, this world could be a little less lonely for those who wear sackcloth and ashes. And there's so much that we can do. And I'm mulling over what a true institutional commitment for Congregation Shalom could be to the mental wellness of all of our congregants. And while I've been playing with many ideas in my mind and will be sharing them at a later date, I want to invite all of you here to endeavor to not be alone and to not let others be alone in our community. Strengthen the bonds of friendship that exist in your lives. Share how you're feeling, good or bad. Ask your friends how they're doing and wait for the answer, a real answer. Okay, I feel like telling stories tonight, so one more. It's a favorite of mine called The Rabbi in the Fire. Once there was a man who receded from the world. He felt alone and diminished and retreated from friends and family. He was once a person who loved to come to synagogue, but began to shy away from that as well. And despite the best efforts of his friends and family, he refused to engage with his community. Concerned about the man's spiritual well-being, the local rabbi decided to pay him a visit. When the rabbi arrived at the man's house, he found him sitting by the fireplace, staring into the embers. The rabbi sat down next to him, and together they sat in silence, watching the flames dance. Now, after what felt like an hour, the rabbi reached into the fire with a poker and gently knocked a burning ember to the side, away from the rest of the embers, and the flames that emerged from them. You can hear the siren, right? And I know it's a drill, but it is important to know that storms enter into our lives, right? I feel safe knowing that I'm with all of you, knowing that we're together as a community. So the man was surprised when he saw that the rabbi had kicked the charcoal away. He was surprised and asked the rabbi why he'd done that. The rabbi drew the man's attention to the lone ember, now off to the side of the pile, and it grew cold and it was dark. And wordlessly, when it was all but extinguished, the rabbi knocked the ember back to the pile, and soon after the ember began to glow and the flames danced once again. With that, the rabbi stood up and walked to the door, and the lonely man understood the purpose of the visit, told the rabbi that he would see him next Shabbat. Friendship means knowing what causes us sadness and what causes us gladness. Hiding doesn't ease the pain, but the helping hearts of others just might. So whether you are in need of a helping heart, or if necessary, a referral for professional help, which I absolutely encourage, please reach out. You will find that we will reach right back. Springtime, though delayed, is here. We see the signs of rebirth and reemergence. After a long period of snow, the earth reveals what lies beneath. The mud and earth beneath the snow. And it's a time of messiness, but it's also a time of possibility. It's a time of renewal. Let what we see inspire us to let the light that is shining enter our hearts and minds, cast open the closed doors and windows, and emerge into a world of fellowship and companionship. Kei nihi ratzon. May this be God's will. I now have the great pleasure of inviting Asher and Scott to come up to our bima as they are going to open up our ark doors. Two of you are good brothers and good sons. We are grateful to you to watching out for our dear friend Felice Bruskin. It is wonderful that you are going to be opening up the ark doors because your mom opens up the door of our congregation for people, welcoming them every Shabbat. So we are so glad that you are here and glad to hear that Felice is doing well and on her way to recovery. So we are going to now turn to Aleinu, which can be found on page 282. And after Aleinu, we'll count the Omer cantor. I forgot to do it earlier, but we'll do it now after Aleinu. So let's do that first.
Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol, la'tet gedula le'yotze breshit, shelo asanu kegoye ha'aratzot, velo samanu kemishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
We are going to remain standing now as we turn to page 278. 278 is the cantor is going to guide us through the counting of the Omer. This is the period between the second day of Pesach and Shavuot as we count together these intermediary days.
הנני מוכן ומזומן לקיים מצוות עשה של ספירת העומר.
I am ready to fulfill the mitzvah of counting the Omer.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו ספירת העומר.
Our praise to you, Adonai, sovereign of all, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to count the Omer.
היום 16 ימים שהם שני שבוע ושני ימים לעומר.
Today is the 16th day of the Omer, that is 2 weeks and 2 days of the Omer. Time certainly flies. Please be seated. It was meaningful both to count, counting is important, but also to hear that alarm, that siren that was going on during the service, during the sermon. On Monday night in Israel in particular, the siren blared in remembrance of Yom HaShoah and the entire country stopped. It's important to stop and remember and to reflect and to count all of those that were lost to us in this terrible, horrible tragedy of the Shoah. When we say these words, 6 million perished, numbers are an interesting thing. Sometimes that feels difficult to comprehend. But to think that a third of our people were extinguished in that terrible tragedy. There's a beautiful poem by Abraham Shlonsky that speaks a little bit to the feeling that we might be feeling in a moment such as this. In the presence of eyes which witnessed the slaughter, which saw the oppression, the heart could not bear. And as witnessed the heart that once taught compassion until the days came to pass that crushed human feeling, I have taken an oath to remember it all, to remember, not once to forget. Forget not one thing to the last generation when degradation shall cease, to the last, to its ending, when the rod of instruction shall have come to conclusion. An oath not in vain passed over the night of terror. An oath no morning shall see me at flesh pots again. An oath, lest from this we learn nothing. We turn now to these beautiful words in honor of Yom HaShoah, Remember to Remember by Michael Isaacson.
Remember to remember all that we once had, both the light and the darkness, the goodness and the bad. Remember to remember, remember to remember all. Remember to remember all that we have lost, both a culture and a people, their greatness and its cost. Remember to remember, remember to remember it all. Forget Forgetting evil is not easy. Forgiving is so hard. So many people, please remember them, God. Remember to remember all we must recall, so their memory will be a blessing for them and for us all. Remember to remember to remember it all.
Thank you, Cantor. In the echo of this beautiful music, we also remember the names of our loved ones who have passed into life eternal in recent days. Particularly in our hearts and minds, we commemorate the beginning of the period of Shiva for Andy Coppett. We think of the period of Shloshim, the 30-day mourning period, for Richard Arbiter, Ren Gollin, Mark Midenthal, Ronald Pinsky, Joanne Sandlow. In addition to those names, so too do we mark the yahrzeit of those dear people who have passed into life eternal during seasons gone by, in whom we feel as though we are walking in their footsteps. We think of Catherine Adams, Mare Babby, Charlotte Emold, Bloom, Adeline Domnitz, Louise Eder, Jordan Fishman, Ellen Futterman, Bertha Ginsberg, Judy Ginsberg, Irvin Glass, Rachel Goodstein, Nina Gorins, Earl Kaplan, Doreen Kimmel, Sam Kimmel, Fred Klimpel, Esther Kramer, Michael Kryman, Betty LaBear, Hyman Liebman, John Lukács, Jen Margolis, Leonard Mendelblatt, Dorothy Plopper, Dorothy Padell, Ruth Rosenthal, Belle Borton Rupa, Gerald Schmerin, Florence Schneiderman, Saul Skolnick, Bernice Shuckett, David Sherman, John Shovers, Edward Silberman, Abraham Stein, Norman Sussman, Augusta Wiener, David R. Wolf, Lida Zemmel, Susan Zukro, Tom Dvorak. If there are names that should be added to this list or any names that should be pronounced differently than I did, please do call those names out loud as I look in your direction. In addition to the names of our loved ones, so too do we think of all those who died due to war and or terrorism, all those who died in defense of this nation and allied nations' ideals. We think of all of those who perished due to this terrible virus that has stricken our nation and our globe, as well as the virus of racism and xenophobia. And we always think of those who perished during the Holocaust. Our griefs and sympathies are mingled as we turn to words sanctified by memory, words glorified by hope. The Kaddish Yatom can be found on page 294. That's 294. We rise together now as one community as we remember them by reciting these sacred words. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shmei Rabbah. V'alma divrach hirute v'amlich malchute. V'chayechon uv'yomechon v'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kari v'yimru amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam ulamei almaya. Yit barach v'yishtabach v'yit pa'ar v'yit romam v'yit naseh. V'yit adar v'yit alev v'yit alal Shmei dekudusha b'richu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn, and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, Amen. You may be seated. We're always taught in our tradition to turn from sadness to joy and to happiness. It's joy now to call upon Brent Arnold, our congregational president, to share with us all the wonderful, lively things that we're doing here at Congregation Shalom. Brent, thank you for your leadership. I know your presidency is drawing to a close over the next couple of months. I'm going to say this a few times. We are very grateful that you stewarded us through 3 years, 3 very challenging years, and you've done an incredible job. I'll keep on thanking you as we progress to the end, but wonderful, Brent. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Appreciate that. Here we go. Another beautiful Shabbat evening here at Congregation Shalom, and Rabbi, it's great to also have you back here with us on this Shabbos. I hope you all had a wonderful week, and I'm itching to start having some services outside again in our beautiful wine garden, but we'll save that for some warmer temperatures. But until then, there's a lot of exciting things going on here at Congregation Shalom. Tomorrow night, we have an Israel at 75 celebration with a dinner and a concert. I know Cantor Purper's excited about that. You should have already registered for the dinner, but we welcome you all to join us for the fabulous concert and the festivities. I've heard it's going to be a great celebration. Then on Sunday night, our Women of Shalom are seeing the show Downtown Harris. And then you can join us for a trivia night for adults on Saturday, April 29th at 7 o'clock p.m. Come with a team or just come by yourself and we'll make sure to get you put on a team. But just make sure to bring all that trivia knowledge that you've got. Unfortunately, due to a lack of interest, we have to postpone our casino night event this year, but we do hope to find another time that will work better for everyone. Also on May 7th at 1 o'clock, we celebrate the holiday of Lag BaOmer at the Cedarburg Creek Farm for an afternoon of fun, a hayride, a petting zoo, and a bonfire with s'mores. Should be a great day for everybody that's going to be counting the Omer. Another reminder that our Saturday Torah study and Shabbat services continue at 9 o'clock and at 10 o'clock with a community lunch to follow. Our religious school is on Sunday morning, and our 7th graders are taking a field trip to the Illinois Holocaust Museum, which I'm excited to be with them on that. And also a reminder that our minyan is every weeknight at 5:45 p.m. We also have a lot more Shavuot programming coming up in May, so please stay tuned for that, and thank you all for joining us here tonight. I hope to see you again tomorrow night at our Israel at 75 celebration, and I wish you all a wonderful Shabbat Shalom.
Yesher Koach, Brent, and we are now going to turn to the Kiddush. And Cantor, will you lead us in the Kiddush? If we could all rise together now. There's a tremendous amount of sweetness that comes from the time that we spend together. And as this hour draws to a close, it's important that we bless it. So let's bless the wine together.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit ki hu yom techila lemikra'ei kodesh zecher litziat Mitzrayim Kivanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha ve'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen. L'chaim. I'll beat Rabbi to the punch. Our closing song.
Thank you, Cantor.
Yes, I have a closing song. Page 346 in the back of your Siddur. Page 346. V'taher libenu. Purify our hearts to serve you in truth. This is a folk song. Tonight's version is arranged by a great composer, may he rest in peace, Fred Pickett. V'taher libenu, v'taher libenu, v'taher libenu le'avdecha be'emet. V'taher libenu, v'taher libenu, v'taher libenu le'avdecha be'emet. La 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 la. V'taher libenu, v'taher libenu, v'taher libenu le'avdecha be'emet. V'taher libenu, v'taher libenu, v'taher libenu le'avdecha be'emet.
Yesher Koach, Cantor, and Shabbat Shalom to all of you.
Shabbat Shalom.
To all of you who are watching at home, Shabbat Shalom to you too. We feel the warm embers of your presence as well. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Good luck tomorrow night.